First, though, we do start with the state of Utah seeking the death penalty for the 22-year-old suspected of shooting and killing conservative political activist Charlie Kirk last week. The state unveiled 7 counts against Tyler Robinson. They include first-degree aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury, 2 counts of obstruction of justice and witness tampering, along with commission of a violent offense in the presence of a child. That shooting happened at an event last week at Utah Valley University. It resulted in a nearly 2-day search for the suspect. Earlier, the Utah County Attorney unveiled those charges, discussing the state's decision to pursue the death penalty.
Following the press conference, I am filing a notice of intent to seek the death penalty. I do not take this decision lightly, and it is a decision I have made independently as county attorney, based solely on the available evidence and circumstances and nature of the crime. Because we are seeking the death penalty, the defendant will continue to be held without bail in the Utah County Jail.
We're going to talk more about this. Let's bring in CBS News senior coordinating producer for crime and public safety, Anna Schecter, joining us now on set here. Anna, this was a lengthy press conference. What were your biggest takeaways?
Well, one, the added charges and a little bit more details about the charges we learned about yesterday, those preliminary charges. So aggravated murder, that's a capital offense. And then the felony discharge of a firearm. Those first 2 counts are carry aggravating factors because, as John Dickerson was just saying, because of Charlie Kirk's political views, that he was targeted because of those views, also because the murder occurred in the presence of children, that children were there and witnessed it. And he made a point of noting that. Then we have a total of 7 charges, including witness tampering, and those pertain to his efforts to get his roommate not to talk to police, to the media, and also the fact that he was changing clothing, so trying to hide the crime. So we learned a little bit more about that. It was a fascinating press conference, Nancy. I was really surprised by how much information we got. We got the entire timeline, and then a full text exchange immediately after the shooting between Robinson and his roommate, which essentially portrays him as being more worried about the gun that he left in the bushes.
His grandfather's rifle.
That's right. How am I going to tell my dad that I lost the rifle? And less worried that he just killed Charlie Kirk, who's a husband and father. And I think that Jeff Gray there, a Utah County attorney, laid that out just to present to the public the facts. There's been so much speculation. Let's just lay it out. There's also, you even heard reporters asking, is the roommate going to be charged? He might have wanted to just lay that out because those are the facts that he's dealing with. In that text exchange, it does not appear that the roommate had any prior knowledge, and essentially it puts the blame solely on Robinson there. Now, the FBI continues to investigate, so if anything changes, if anyone else knew about it or contributed to this, they will, of course, step in and file charges. But at this time, this is what they're working with. They're treating this as a state murder. We heard that right at the top. And when he was asked about federal charges or potential, terrorism charges that prosecutors might be looking into, he said he doesn't know anything about that, and he's not going to comment on any of the evidence. He basically laid out what he's working with.
Yeah, absolutely, as their investigation continues. And I have plenty more questions. But first, I'm going to turn things over now to Carter Evans, CBS News national correspondent there, who was inside that press briefing. He joins us now live. And Carter, you were inside the room. What were your biggest standout points inside that press conference?
I think the main thing that I noticed is something that Anna already mentioned, which was shed some light into what he was thinking immediately after this shooting. And it clearly, at least according to the text from the roommate there, he was concerned about police finding that rifle and possibly finding fingerprints. He was also scared that he was going to see news about the inscription on the cartridges. We also learned that the mother was one of the first ones to notice that the pictures that authorities had released looked a lot like her son. And she confronted her son and said, "Where are you?" And he said that he was homesick. His mother and father conferred and agreed that the picture definitely looked like him, and also that the description of the gun and the picture of the gun that police had released looked a lot like a gun that he had been given as a gift, and it turns out it was his grandfather's gun. And again, the text between the roommate and Robinson indicated that he was concerned about what he was going to tell his dad about losing that gun, and he was trying to recover that because it was the only evidence that he had left at the scene, or so he thought. But it turns out that is not the case. He did leave more evidence at the scene. He had some evidence, some DNA evidence on the rooftop where he was. There was a tremendous amount of surveillance video and those surveillance photos that did capture a photo of his face, and that is what led to him turning himself in the first place, and the fact that the FBI released those photos the day after Charlie Kirk's death. So we're getting a lot better picture of what happened in the moments following the shooting of Charlie Kirk and what this alleged shooter did afterward.
And Carter, so much has been asked in the past week about what was the reason behind all of this, what was the motive. And prosecutors laid out, as you mentioned, a little bit more evidence, actually plenty more evidence. I know some of this has been trickling out in the past few days, but I thought what really also stood out for us here was that the cartridges apparently had etchings, according to the prosecutor. They're also talking about what Robinson's demeanor has been like in this past year in terms of changing according to his parents. Does that line up with what you've also heard on the ground and talking to people there?
Yeah, that lines up with what we've heard, and it lines up with what we've heard all along. As you say, information has been trickling out all along, and this is just a confirmation of what we have been hearing over the last couple of days. But we did get a lot more detail with those text messages, and we got some more information about evidence that they found as well. Not only did they find bullet cartridges inscribed in the gun, but they also found bullet casings with similar inscriptions at his home, as well as a target that had been used for target practice. They wouldn't go much farther than that. But one thing that I found interesting, too, was a text to the roommate that said, look under the computer keyboard. And under the computer keyboard, a prosecutor say was a note basically admitting that he had done this. Mm-hmm. And the roommate took a picture of that note. So it looks like they have a tremendous amount of evidence against him. The prosecution here was asked if his admissions to his parents and to his roommate will count as an admission of guilt in a court of law. And the prosecutor basically said that would be up to the jury.
Carter, we were talking about some of the standouts from that press conference. It also stands out to me that they gave so many details relatively still early on in this investigation.
Right, they gave a lot of details, and they gave what they thought was necessary, essentially to show the court that there is reason to move forward with this case. And in just a couple of hours, he will appear virtually, Tyler Robinson, that is, virtually for a preliminary hearing. And they say that's going to be really quick. Basically, the judge is going to read the charges against him, and they are going to determine if he has an attorney to represent him. And then the legal process will continue moving from there. I plan to be at that hearing, so we'll watch that for you, and that will be live streamed as well. So we should be able to see what he looks like today. We know that he is being held in the Utah County Jail right now. He's being held in a special housing unit where he is being observed to see if he could be a harm to himself or others. We are told by the sheriff that that observation period could take several days. They want to make sure that everything is in order before, if and when they release him into the general population. But it will be interesting to see what he looks like today. Does he show a sense of relief on his face, as some individuals do when they are accused of a crime and captured? Will he speak at all? The prosecution would not indicate if he was cooperating right now, but we had heard over the last couple of days that he has not been speaking with investigators, as is his right. We also learned today that he told his roommate not to speak with investigators. And in fact, he told his roommate to go and get a lawyer if police approached him. And that's one reason why he was charged with obstruction of justice.
All right, Carter Evans, thank you very much for joining us there in Provo. We will check in with you again soon. Anna, I'm going to bring you back in now, senior coordinating producer of our Crime and Public Safety Unit. And we've been hearing just about so much of the timeline that led into this. But also what stood out to me in all of this is that apparently he had been saying, according to prosecutors, that this was a plan that was only set in motion for a little over a week before this shooting took place.
That's exactly right. And it's a really great point. So it's just over a week. Think about it. Charlie Kirk and his team had blasted out on the internet, hey, we're going to do this prove me wrong event with the date and the location. And we also learned that he even told his dad, according to prosecutors, that he deemed that a stupid place to hold it. And on that note, what did he write? He said, I have the chance to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it. So the other thing we learned about, which fills in these gaps, the minutes and hours immediately following the attack. Did he drive straight back? Well, no, he actually lingered in his vehicle right by the campus as police were racing up to the roof and they found the imprints of his forearm and his palm. And they realized which sort of direction he ran in, and they were following his track. He stayed right there. He was thinking, I want to go back and retrieve that gun. So it took him a while to leave the immediate area. And that image is it's just such a strange turn of events. He did not get out of Dodge. He stayed in the area, worried about that gun, realizing that he might have fingerprints on that gun, and he was communicating all of this to the roommate. But what just stands out to me, stunning, is that he still thought that he would get away with it. And like I said earlier, he was more worried about appearing like he'd lost the gun than taking Charlie Kirk's life.
It is really just remarkable when you consider that. Also, that he seemed relatively plugged in to the news coverage that was surrounding this in the immediate aftermath. If he's talking to his roommate, according to prosecutors, saying
he's on his phone scrolling, seeing news.
Seeing that someone was arrested, that someone was handcuffed behind all of this, and saying they don't have the right person. But he was saying very much
he was up to date on the fact that initially there was a man in his 60s who was actually known to local law enforcement who was taken into custody and then released. He knew about that. He knew that another young man who apparently was wearing similar clothing to him was also taken into custody. He didn't seem to express fear that he was about to be apprehended by police. He was just reporting what he was seeing. However, the fact that he wasn't able to go back to retrieve the gun, that seemed troubling to him and seemed like worrisome to him that might lead to his arrest.
And I also want to ask you about these etchings that prosecutors are talking about that were on the cartridges inside that rifle. Some of them, I mean, these are very pointed statements. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
Absolutely. Some of this we've reported before, but it was interesting to see it all laid out. There were references to gaming language. He was very active online and was a participant in the gaming community. So on the cartridge that he actually used was written a sort of, it's notices bulge, OWO, what's this? So we've been reporting that, but it's a gaming reference. The second etching, which was on a casing that wasn't used, it was not because he only fired one shot. Hey fascist, catch. A third, oh Bella, ciao Bella, which is a reference to fascism in Italy and an anti-fascist slogan. And then the fourth one, if you read this, you are gay, LMAO. It's interesting that this Utah attorney wanted to lay all of that out. We did hear some of it from the governor at the press conference Friday morning, but this was more fulsome. And again, as Carter noted, there were other bullets also with etchings on them. So he was clearly, during that week or so that he was planning this, he had prepared a lot of these.
Actually, I wanted to ask you about, though, when you talk about this fulsome news conference, that they're giving us so much information. Do you think that's in part because there has been so much speculation and such an intense spotlight on this case?
I do. The Utah state attorney repeatedly said that the interest from the public is understandable. The tremendous interest from the public. There's been a lot of reporting, and I think he wanted to just lay out the facts so that some incorrect information that's been floating around, to tamp that down and just lay out really what's also in the public record now, because all of this is going to be in that criminal information that is filed in court. That's how it works in Utah State Court. He has to present the information to prove that there is enough evidence to take this to trial. That's how it works. And so that's what he did. But he really laid it all out. I mean, this is the first time we're hearing about his mother, that his mother actually called him the morning after the shooting, having seen the photos, thinking it looked like him, and he told her, I'm sick today, I'm homesick. It really is that mother-son relationship. It reminds you this young man was just 22 years old, very young person, still communicating with his parents in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And Anna, I know that we're going to be talking again later today because of this court appearance that we're waiting for. That'll be at 5 o'clock here on the East Coast, 3 o'clock there locally. What else do you think we can possibly expect coming forward? Could there be the possibility of additional charges, even with the death penalty on the table here?
Well, the FBI continues to investigate, so that part is not over. They're probably interviewing people as we speak and continue to pour through his online life. If they find more evidence that would merit another charge, they can bring that in the Utah State case. They can add those charges, although it seemed like they feel pretty confident, given the fact that the roommate was so cooperative, showed all those messages. Maybe they'll stumble upon more evidence, but it seems like they feel confident they've got it all. Of course, on the federal side, the feds are looking for evidence that would meet that federal bar to file charges. So that can mean, was there crossing state lines? They might be looking for a way to connect this to terrorism. They haven't gotten that yet, probably, which is why we haven't seen charges.
Anna Schecter, we always appreciate your analysis. Thank you very much for being at the table here with us.